Be your authentic self. I call bullcrap. Cue the music. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, and welcome to an authentic episode of the Good Leader Podcast. We are on a mission to increase the world's leadership capacity. We know the world needs better leaders, and you are one of them. So welcome back. A couple of episodes ago, and we keep talking about it off air, in between. I've had conversations with it, with other people. My wife even brought it up on authentic self, okay, and this authentic self. And I feel this obligation, all right? I even Googled it up to do my, very elementary research, but I found an article.
Yeah.
And like a good researcher, I stopped at an article that reinforced my belief. So I didn't search other articles.
Yeah.
I found the one that really reinforced my belief.
You said that's what
and I said, that's it. That's what I think. That's what I want. So I'm only going to reference one article. If you all want to come at me with something else,
I'm on it.
You can. But for full disclosure, we are going to talk about being your authentic self in the workplace, because that came up a lot when we were talking about imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. And I think we just throw out this word authentic a lot. And it's like, okay, hold on. It's like transparent. Mm-hmm. Transparent, easy to say. How transparent do you want me to be? I mean, transparency to me is see-through. So that's almost like the literal definition to me is just unfiltered thought. I'm being transparent. Mm-hmm. That's not good leadership. That is not good leadership. I'm going to tell everyone on the team everything. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's healthy leadership. It's more like we don't want transparency. We want translucency. Share some things. I can see behind the door somewhat. I can't see everything. That's not my role. That's not my place. Mm. In the same way, then, authentic self. Be your authentic self in the workplace. I disagree. That's what I'm saying. I call BS. I disagree. Mm. You should not. If the way that, I will say this, the way that we often interpret, think, or that authenticity is stated to me in 2024, I do not believe that is true. Now, I do think, and I'm going to give another definition of authentic, because I do believe in authenticity, but I believe it is different. I got a couple of stories for it. But when we say this authentic self in the workplace, and this is my quick rant, and just for full disclosure to everyone listening, if this is your first time listening, welcome. I am smack middle-aged. I am 42, almost 43 years old. I think that's important for the context of this conversation. Mm-hmm. How old are you? Because we are talking about generational differences once again, and a lot of this authentic self, imposter syndrome stuff came up really thinking about younger people in the workforce. Yeah. So I'm 42, 43. Rochelle, how old are you?
I'm 30.
30. Anj, how old are you?
30.
30. Okay, so we got a couple of kids over there. And
we
the
told
old
the line
man.
of Gen Z
I was
and
about to be
millennial.
like,
We're right on the line.
if we're talking about Gen Z, we don't have them represented.
We do not have them
table.
represented.
So
no, and technically, so really, technically, we're all three millennials. I think technically, I'm on the old. I'm the oldest.
Are you?
100%.
He's on the line right above
1981
Gen X, and we're on the line right to Gen Z. We're literally like
that's what I'm saying. We're bookends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Bookends. Which we talk about with any generational differences. It's kind of ish on both ends. Like if you're technically speaking, they say like 1981 to 1996 are millennials, but it's kind of ish on both ends. You can be born in 1997, and it's like I'm kind of more millennial, so I'm. We blur, but it's good because I think we blur the opposite ways.
Oh,
I think
for sure.
y'all are young millennials blurring Gen Z. I'm an older millennial blurring Gen X.
For sure. Yep.
So we don't have really. It's interesting then, since we are in the middle, because not that it's better or worse, but we do not have the two further sides of the spectrum. The Gen Zs who are smack in the middle of it, mid-20s, being accused of all this authentic self stuff, and the older Gen Xers or boomers who are over here going like,
what are
you saying? Suck it up.
What are the words
exactly
coming out of your mouth?
Now, but being in the middle, I lean toward more the old man and the authentic self, because I feel like when we're talking about imposter syndrome, especially when we're talking about like, even Anj was throwing darts at me saying like, I am allowed to show up as my authentic self. Kind of. I can hear that, and I can, and I do respect that. And I do not want to trivialize sexism in the workplace or ageism in the workplace, because those isms actually definitely exist and on the extremes are true. But it begs the question, like, okay, well, Jerrod, you're allowed to be your authentic self. Well, define authentic self. I mean, that's not entirely true. if I use the adverb entirely.
If you're thinking of just a constant stream of everything.
Yeah. What do you mean by authentic self?
Yeah.
Like, and I think, and I could be wrong, and this is where the article comes in. So I found this article from Fast Company.
We'll link it in the show notes.
Link it in the show notes. Thank you very much. Way to go, Rochelle. But it's an interesting article, and it's basically saying, I want to get my numbers right here. I think it's like 6 in 10. A recent poll. And this is a recent article and survey, October 3rd of 2024. Work is not the place to be your best self. TikTok reacts to a survey on why Gen Zers are getting fired. That's the headline. And then the subtext, 6 in 10 employers reportedly said they'd already given their Gen Z workers the boot because of this authentic self showing up in the workplace in an unprofessional manner. I'm just being my best self. I'm holding on to my truth. All those types of like idioms that have creeped into the workplace. I'm curious of your immediate take on this. And then I've got my thought and an actual framework for being your authentic self in the workplace. But what is your quick thought to this? What is your quick reaction to all of this? This authentic self in the workplace, this article, you've both read it. What are your thoughts? Your immediate thoughts?
Gosh.
I think I inherently want to know, like, well, I'd love to hear their exact definition of what authentic self means, first of all.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Because I do think, like, a manager, especially, let's say, Gen X manager saying, I'm firing you because you want to be your authentic self, is not the same definition that Gen Z heard authentic self, right?
Okay.
So that's ultimately my question is, like, I know you said you have a definition, so that's
I do,
great.
yeah.
But
And you can tell me if you like it or hate it.
I'm not hearing them really, like, so what's the other side? What is the follow-up?
Okay.
Like, if you are firing them for authentic self, for being their authentic self, what did they need to do differently? That I think that's what we're not really coaching Gen Z on. Like, am I firing you because your authentic self is kind of, let's see.
Lazy,
like
unprofessional.
Sure. But I don't even know that that's their authentic self because, man, if
Maybe
you watch
not.
them work on social
That's
media,
true.
they work pretty freaking hard.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't think, that's what I don't like about the word authentic self is I don't think everyone's using it, that we're all
With the
using
same
it
definition.
differently,
Yeah.
super differently.
I agree.
And it's
I
very
think
loaded.
when older generations use authentic self, they are leaning towards like, well, you're
A
lazy and you
negative
don't want to work
connotation.
hard. And I'm like, but that's not even their authentic self. Like, that has nothing to do with authentic self.
It might.
Really.
It might.
Well, I mean, my first reaction
might.
is just
Depends on how
kind
you
of
define
being
it.
like, okay, I probably lean more on the Gen Z side of just
Okay.
like, okay, well, I'm asking for, and I'm not Gen Z, but I think I see that there's almost like more of a healthy work culture that is kind of being asked of, where it's like, actually, no, you can't say that. That is sexist. Actually,
Yeah.
no, you can't call me after work. These are my hours, and I'm setting boundaries. And like kind of that reaction being like, oh, well, you're being lazy. And we're like, well, just because I'm not checking my email on Thanksgiving,
Sure.
which has been real for me in past
Okay.
jobs.
Wow.
Like, and oh, you took Thanksgiving weekend to not work? How
Yeah.
dare you? And
Yeah.
I'm like, no, this was a boundary I set actually to spend time with my family. That came in, whatever. And so I think that I'm interpreting it probably that authentic self as being like, I'm interpreting it positively and generously of like, I need a mental health day, or here are my boundaries, or, things like that. So in my automatically kind of just hearing this and reading this article really quickly, I'm also like, well, hold on. I think maybe we have unrealistic expectations of what work is or isn't.
On both sides.
On both sides.
Yes.
I
agree with
think
that.
on one side, maybe Gen Z is coming at it being like, okay, I need it to be all of these things and it's not, right?
Yep.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
And so I'm almost kind of more like, maybe this is a positive. I would hope this is a positive thing where it's like, okay, we're changing the narrative of what is work almost. And I think that's probably helpful. But then I'm also curious to be like, well, okay, well, if they're being fired, like why? Why
Yeah,
are they
well,
being fired? What's going on? What kind of
exactly.
conversations?
That was why the article was
And
really
I'm-
alarming to me, because I was like, okay, people are actually like, I've heard the kind of cultural war aspect and been a part of those conversations of like, okay, kind of a push pull, and this is frustrating to me, but I'm not firing them. You know what I'm saying? And I'm playing a little bit of the curmudgeon in the corner to set this
Well,
up.
yeah, sure.
But
Literally
Those
in the corner.
definitely
literally in the
exist.
corner.
Yeah.
But I do feel it at times. Now, I can't think of an instance where I've fired someone specifically over something that I would call this, like this Gen Z difference, young people and authentic self argument. So this article was the first time that really pulled it into, oh, that's an actual like distinctive trend that you know, six out of 10 employers say they have fired someone for these sorts of things, this authentic self ideology. What were we gonna say, Anj?
No, I'm just I'm thinking as we're talking about it, but I am definitely guilty of oversimplifying things, so I'm not trying to oversimplify it.
Okay.
But to me,
Okay.
what I
It
don't
helps.
like about the article is that they really are not making. They're just saying they were fired off of I can't be my authentic
Yes,
self.
they don't
And
tell you
I'm
what
like,
they were.
Okay, but what were they doing? Because
Yes.
that would make a lot more sense.
Totally agree with you. This article is very surface level.
Yeah. So on the one hand, for maybe the generation of the ones doing the firing, I think that they can be guilty of not being honest enough and clear enough earlier on, right? Like we have both led Gen Zs, and I actually did see when it was a lot of work. Don't get me wrong, but I saw various different points of like transformation, right? In that it took a lot of work though, and I had to be really honest, and we had to have really hard conversations, and they cried a lot. You have to be okay with the crying. Because sometimes I literally think they do. They will cry. They will show emotion. You have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I don't think the generation totally above us really wants to deal with that. That's one. On the other hand, for Gen Z, because they both, I think, have something. For Gen Z, I think they need to, there's this inherent need of, this is who I am, and I'm going to make it very shallow based, like even appearance, right?
Well, it's okay.
Like
We're
dress,
going to start
style.
shallow. Yes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So who I am, Andrea, higher.
Yep.
My authentic, my most comfortable appearance,
Yes.
right, is going to be in like athletic wear, leggings and in sneakers, maybe Nikes or something
Yes.
like that, right? That's my most
Yes.
authentic. I'm my most comfortable in that. Do I get to show up to work in that?
No.
No,
Exactly.
I don't. And there's not, we're giving a lot of tolerance to that. It's like we're complaining about it behind closed doors, but I'm not seeing a lot where somebody comes, hey, you can't wear those shoes again.
Yes.
You don't get
Yep.
to wear that top again.
Yep.
They're not, I don't see that. Like they're just kind
I
of
agree.
talking about them in the back end. Like, can you believe so-and-so's
I know.
wearing, I can't believe they're doing that. And then they let that irritate them. So then they let something wrong about their performance that you would have dealt differently with someone else. It's like a ripple effect.
But it
Do you know what I
compounds.
mean? So you already have no grace for it. You're already not addressing it, and then it compounds, like you said.
You are hitting the nail on the head, and that's where I want to drive this episode, because this is the Good Litter podcast. It's not a gripe fest, and I didn't even come on here to gripe.
Good.
I didn't want to just gripe. I will say that I feel this. I feel this, like,
I do.
especially when people. Here's what I don't like. So, good leaders of all ilks. If you use authentic self to justify bad behavior, shame
Right.
on you. Wrong.
Right.
Like, that is wrong.
Right.
That is.
Bad idea.
If there is a culture shift toward a healthier aspect of work, great. Using authentic self as a shield for selfishness is not helping that cultural shift.
Right. Right.
So when I see that, and I have seen that, that goes the other way. You know what I'm saying? That you are proving the old timers' point of like, yep, that's why I'm calling you on Thanksgiving, because I let you take 15 mental health days before that.
Right.
Yeah. That's true.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that is an abuse. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I use 15 just as a hyperbolic number. 500 work health days. Okay. There is a sentence in the article that I think kind of encapsulates what we're talking about. And it's that in every other aspect of their lives, Gen Zers have been encouraged to be their authentic self.
Right.
In every other aspect,
Right.
express yourself. And especially, I will say, I do think social media plays a part
Yeah.
of this. Everyone is a platform. Everyone is a star. Everyone is an artist.
Yep.
Everyone's a creator. Everyone has a personal brand.
Yep.
Everyone.
They do, yeah.
Everyone has this personal brand.
Yeah.
Well, then either go be that personal brand or work for this company
And be that brand.
and be that brand.
Right.
You are checking your personal brand at the door because you're accepting this paycheck. And if you do not want to accept the paycheck, keep your personal brand. That's where you hit the nail on the head when you said we do not do a good job of clarifying expectations early.
We don't.
We do not.
I've done it.
That's where I have too. And I've also been guilty of the irritant behind closed doors and like, well, have you addressed that? No. Should I? Yes. And I'm just but it's also Good Leader Podcast, kind of like I talked about in the last episode, being that benevolent dictator and sometimes being too benevolent. That's an area where I've been too benevolent. It's like, okay, this is actually an infraction, or maybe infraction's too far, but it's pushing whether it's professionalism or interoffice interactions, it's pushing in a way that we don't want to go, but I let it go because, well, I want to be a good leader, want to be benevolent. These Gen Zs, let them have a little bit. Okay.
Yep.
I think that because of what you said, we need to distinguish between behaviors and core. And the core part, and this is where I'd like to land this plane for today, behaviors should be adjusted according to environment unless you remove yourself from the environment.
Mm-hmm.
Let me unpack.
I was about to be like, give me an example.
I will.
Yeah.
If I am invited to your wedding, Rochelle, you say, Jerrod, I'd love to have you come to the wedding. Cool. What's the setting? What's the invitation? Where is it? Which Rochelle do you have? Your dream wedding in mind? Is it a destination on a beach? Is it I know I'm asking you a personal question. Italy. Okay, great.
Let's go.
Formal wear? Formal there?
Absolutely.
Italy, that's fancy.
Black tie.
Okay.
No,
well,
I'm making it up.
no, but that's good. I'm glad you made it up because black
Great.
tie.
It's black tie,
It's a black tie wedding.
That's next.
Well, I'm in Italy. I'm going on. I'm kind of using this as a vacation too. I mean, it's a good excuse to go to Italy.
Exactly.
But I'm just going to show up in my, my flip flops and socks, my, cargo shorts.
I would kick you out. You would not be.
That's my authentic self.
Love you so
You
much.
invited me to the wedding. I'm here. I'm fully here. I support you. I want to be a good patron of the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just being my authentic self. Now, I know that's hyperbole, but that is the example what I mean by behavioral settings. This is a black tie wedding. Now, if you choose, you're saying, my authentic self never wears black tie, then you cannot go to the wedding. In professional settings, then, I feel like that is what is being eroded, but not necessarily, to Anja's point, being clarified.
It's not.
It's not being clarified. And it's easy to look at dress. And you know what I'm saying? And I get...
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
That's an easy one. Sure. But also, that comes down to decorum, language, attitude, even, you know what I'm saying? Like, all of these things, like, what are the expectations of this job, this environment? What are the expectations and what type of environment? What are the behavioral settings? And we inherently teach this to children. Like, we're going to a funeral. This is the appropriate behavior. We're going to a wedding. We are going to school. We are going to, versus the other side. Hey, we're at home. We're at home in your playroom. We're playing. We're outside. Go crazy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, this is your inside voice.
Right.
I think
don't use your outside voice.
Don't use. Well, I think many people in the workplace today want to use their outside voice indoors, and that is their authentic self.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can see that. I think I like...
I have a lot of big feelings, but I'm trying to...
I know.
I'm like,
Go for it.
No, I agree, because I want to take it out of dress for a second.
Okay, yeah, go ahead. That was just an easy example. I agree.
This is the part, for me, that I'm like, I could be oversimplifying.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, am like, what's their performance? That's it. For me, at the end of the day, I'm like, I don't care what you wear. I don't care how you show up. I do care if it affects the culture, and that's what I'm going to talk about in a second.
Okay.
But if it is not affecting the culture,
right,
I'm not necessarily going to gripe about it. I am going to.
So just to clarify, if you're wearing like slippers or a hoodie or, I don't know, a onesie, but you are putting out fantastic content that is doing amazing and hitting all the KPIs, you're like, wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you.
I like that you said putting out. If you're putting out the content, that's your job. You're in the little corner office. That's stupid.
Right.
You're in the little side office, and that's your job. You are putting out. I don't care. Now, if our office manager, whose job it is to greet people, say hello to people, welcome people, introduce people to Jerrod, whatever that is, if she is going to show up in a hoodie and slip, nope. I would say we would both be drawing the line. But again, this isn't about dress. I know Jerrod's going to have something to say. You can.
No,
start.
I actually it's a question, but I think it goes deeper than dress. But dress is a good starting point there. My belief is that it is the organization's right to make that decision.
Yeah.
And I think the impetus of the article and the stereotypical Gen Z that we're talking about, which may or may be an unfair stereotype, but the authentic self argument would say, why can't I wear whatever I want?
Yeah.
As long as I'm getting it done. You're saying, what I'm saying is, if I'm writing the paycheck, I dictate the behavior, not you. You as a boss say, well, I don't care what you wear as long as you produce. Great. That's your choice, boss. Awesome. And there are some workplaces like that.
Right.
If you want to wear your onesie, go find the workplace. I think the 6 out of 10, and I know we don't have the details, which is frustrating about this article.
Right.
But I think the 6 out of 10, the impetus is, well, does that authority lie with the individual or the organization?
Yeah,
See, it's just black and white to me. I'm like, it obviously lies with the organization, but if that is even a question in your organization, you are not being clear enough. That's my point.
No,
I'm
I think, okay, once they are clear, okay, once they, here's,
That's
I could be
assuming
wrong.
they were clear.
My interpretation is, okay, so when that clarity comes, Gen Z's argument is, you're not letting me be my authentic self. I'm still going to show up this way. Well, then you're fired.
Yeah. Then,
Because 6 out of 10, because the way I read the article was 6 out of 10, because they don't know how to act in the workplace. There's this whole other, and you brought up a great reference a couple episodes ago about like training people how to work in the workplace, and that a younger generation coming up, not just Gen Z, probably Gen Alpha right after them, have not really been trained to work in the workplace.
They haven't,
And so we're training them now. But I think that's the distinction.
Yep.
I think that's, well, okay, so that's where maybe this episode, you know what I'm saying? That's where I can be a curmudgeon in the corner and be like, well, the lesson you need to learn is it is up to your boss.
yeah, you want to know what I think really the biggest problem is?
What?
Is foresight. That's what
Okay.
I think. That is what I think genuinely the biggest problem is, and where I think Gen Z. This is where I've had a little sympathy for them. I don't know if they've been taught to think this way, or if they are, their foresight's very different than what maybe ours was at their age. But I am asking myself, and I try to ask our people a lot. Hey, what are your goals? Okay, so what are your goals? What do you want to be?
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, I think what's difficult for them is a lot of them do not want to be this. That they don't. So if they get fired from the job, they don't care. They'll go find another one. Which is still that's why I'm like, well, if they got fired, maybe that was for the best for the company and the person. I don't know. That's not necessarily where I would hang my hat. But I do think a problem is that because I genuinely think most of them don't know what they want to do or where they want to be. I think a lot of them don't even know who they are. And so because of that, it's difficult to hold them to a standard that they inherently don't even know themselves. So if I could think of someone on our staff right now, right? And he says like, well, I want to be a CMO. I know that. I want to be a chief marketing officer. I want to produce really good content. I want to do this, that. Well, it inherently makes my job a lot easier because I will point to, okay, I love that. Hey, in this meeting, a CMO would show up this way.
Yes.
Hey, in this meeting,
definitely.
a CMO, they're going to wear those pants. They're not going to wear those pants.
Yeah.
Hey, a CMO, they would have had a slideshow ready for their staff. They were, right? Like I can guide them to, you see something down the way that you know you want. Let me tell you what that's going to do and what that's not going to do.
Let me help you get there.
Let me help you get there.
Yeah.
I really think that is the biggest hurdle right now with not even just Gen Z, but just younger.
Yep.
Rochelle, we were just talking about this recently, but just younger generation people, younger people in general is they do not have that answer. There's way too many options now.
Yep.
There's way too many
that's
paths
true.
they could take. And so you're telling them this is what you should do, but they're like, says who?
Well,
maybe
and
not.
the definition of success has changed.
Absolutely.
It used to be
Yes,
get to the
totally.
top,
Yeah,
become
yep.
the CEO, become the founder or whatever. But that definition of success has totally gone out the window. And I think honestly, COVID was a part of that too, where suddenly
I think so too.
everything fell apart.
Yeah.
And you're like, maybe I do just want to run a farm and can beets.
Yep.
Maybe that's actually what I want to do.
Yeah.
And
Thank you, Dwight Schrute.
Exactly. And then you're like, well, sure, you could fine, like you said, fire me.
Yes.
Because I'm living a very fulfilling life outside of my job, and I actually think that's healthy.
Yeah.
I think that's good. I think that you need to have your job is a part of your fulfilling life, but your connections, relationships, how you give back to your community, your faith journey, if you have one, those are really also a big part of it. And so now I think Gen Z is just, and that's where I was like, man, I have a lot of big feelings about this because I'm kind of like, it feels like we're kind of like, who's right and who's wrong. And I just think that everyone's definitions are changing. And I'm like, this is the Gen Z world. This is the world that we're going to. And yeah, maybe we need to hold people to a higher standard or give them clarity. But I'm also kind of like, guys, if you don't hire them, this is their future. They're going to go off and do their own thing.
Yep.
And
people also make
like,
decisions.
we're going to be gone. you
Yeah,
know?
so I think part of the problem where I'm saying that about like the trajectory, right? Like where do you want to be? They really don't know. And I really do believe this to be true. I think the older or just the generation before them, whoever is hiring them, their hiring manager or someone else has made a decision about them based on how they showed up and has inherently, whether they say it out loud or not, but subconsciously decided, they're not going to be worth my time.
Ooh.
They don't talk the way I talk.
Yep.
Yikes.
They're not even sure what their sexuality is. No one's going to take them seriously.
Yep.
I'm not going to waste my time, really, with it. I'm going to ride it out till they're either going to stay or they're going to go. They're going to figure it out for themselves. I'm not going to waste my time. And that is where I would say both fail. Gen Z, you could have showed up better to show that you actually want to be coached in one way. Maybe it's not even in the business world. Maybe that hiring manager of yours helps you realize, no, you're right. I don't want to work here. Let's part ways. And I'm realizing I want to work in whatever other industry exists in the world. But the hiring manager also needs to take a step out of their bias to say, if this person looked like me, talked like me, didn't have a high-pitched voice, would I be more willing to ask them what they want to do with their future? Would I be more willing to see potential and point them a different way? Or am I just not used to the lifestyle they're living? So I take a step back. That's where I really don't agree on the hiring, firing pieces, because I think we fall more into that trap. All of us, human nature, but I do think we fall into that.
Yeah, because how can someone live up to expectations if you're not telling them? You know, unvoiced expectations always go unmet. If you're saying like, hey, this is actually how I need you to show up, and if they're like, okay, well, I don't want to show up that way, then you're like, okay, then yeah, that is the disconnect. But someone saying like, hey, I see this in you. I think you could be really good at this if you chose to show up in this way. I feel like that's a different conversation of, hey, I believe in you and you have something to offer, and it's different than how I would come at it. And so there's like, on both sides.
It's also lateral. Like I have watched team members of ours automatically make a decision about someone and choose to not treat them the way that they should have been treated. Like it's lateral too. So, but honestly, Gen Z doesn't really, they're like, if my coworker doesn't like me, I don't care. So now as a leader, you have a culture issue. You're like, okay, well now I got to deal with all this, but you have a bias and you don't care that someone has a bias in you, but I haven't said enough clarity to say, hey, we should all come dressed to this level. If you're higher, that's better. But there's just so many layers. I feel like we would write a whole freaking book on it.
Absolutely.
People
so many layers.
And they will.
Well, and as we close out today, I think for my 2 cents, it is a disservice to stop at authentic self. I think that is that's the point to me that we alluded to a couple episodes with the imposter syndrome and showing up as your authentic self. I'm like, that is way too much of an umbrella statement either way.
Yeah, don't fall under it.
For me to categorize someone being in a judgmental way is like, well, that's who they are, and I don't trust them. I'm not gonna, I'm gonna allow my bias. Okay, well, that's too much.
Sure.
That's too much of an umbrella. And on the other side, hey, you're not letting me be my authentic self. No, I'm asking you to show up on time. I'm asking you to turn your camera on Zoom. I'm asking you, you know what I'm saying? I'm asking within the boundaries of decency behavior of what is expected here.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
that to me is my rant. I hate the use of this word authentic self. It's just like, that is not authentic self either way. Either way. Either way. Either you're judging people and thinking, well, that's who they are, and I'm going to, subconsciously penalize them for that, or this is who I am, deal with it. No, you can change your behaviors based on the setting and keep your authentic self. On the next episode, we'll reveal to you what that authentic self actually is. But for today, you like that? There you go. That's a little foreshadowing for you. Oh, hey. Hey, for today, it is an important conversation that you should be having, not just with Gen Z, with everyone. Because what Andra was saying there at the end, I'm like, what? 50-year-olds don't know what they want to do. 60-year-olds don't know what they want to do. They certainly didn't know what they want to do at 20. There were just fewer options then.
Sure.
So, that is I do think what Rochelle said is totally true. I do think that we are creating some new good culture shifts in the workplace, like expectations on holidays, after hours, all those types of things. But once again, even those, well, like if I'm an emergency worker, well then of course I can get called out.
Yeah.
So it's the expectations of the job.
Yeah.
I actually, as my
do you
final,
know them?
my big twist ending, those 6 out of 10 firings may have been the best things for both parties.
Yeah.
May not. Maybe it was complete bias and judgmental on, or maybe it was like, you know what? This is not working out. And to Gen Z's, you know what? It isn't. I want to work somewhere else.
Yeah.
Let's all work as good leaders to not take any of this stuff at face value at the surface level, to dig deeper. And for your organization, the lesson of the day, always work to bring clarity. Confusion is natural. Clarity is work. So go out there and be a good leader.